This is a power steering ram from a John Deere 345 model. The one I have was one of the first ones made. It was made in 1995. And they made this exact same model for, I believe it's 6 or 7 years, up until 2002. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure about all this, but all the tractors for garden size, 48-inch deck approximately, mowers that John Deere has made with power steering use a ram similar to this. It's not the same. There are differences in the ends and the attachments, but the sizes look just about the same. And every one I've seen is a welded on end on both ends. So basically everyone they use is non-repairable. So when the seals blow on this and it starts leaking everywhere, you got to throw it away and buy a new one, which would have been fine 20 years ago probably. But John Deere wants over $500 for this little hydraulic cylinder. It's barely 12 inches long, which is obscene. It's just insanity. But the only ones that I can find that are even close to being affordable are used ones on eBay, and who knows if they're any good or not. And I would switch to a newer model. You can find some of those new built aftermarket companies around the $200 range, which isn't too horrible, but it's still way more than I want to spend on a tractor that's that old. It's in great shape and it runs great otherwise, but I got it used and was very, very happy with it until this stupid power steering cylinder started leaking. And it was just seeping to begin with, so it wasn't too bad. I'd just keep topping up the fluid and not worry about it. But now it's gotten so bad that any pressure on the system, it just starts oozing out. Not spraying, but just pouring out in the end. So I had to do something. So I researched on the internet and found that some people have repaired them and that know how to weld, and you can even get shops to do it and weld it for you, but I'm sure it'd cost you as much as a new one would at that point if you had to pay all that labor. So I'm going to try it myself, and I have and you can't buy any seal kits for these either. The only way you can get the seals for them is to take it apart, cut it apart, take it to your hydraulic shop, one who will work with you, who will measure up all these little tiny slots, all these tiny little grooves in there for the shaft seal and the scraper, and order or have, he had two of the parts. He had to order the scraper. He didn't have that in stock my local shop, but he did all that and got me all the correct seals and everything for 45 bucks. So 45 versus 500, I'm going to try to fix it myself. So I just wanted to show some people what I've done. I've read about people doing this, but I could not find a video anywhere of anybody taking apart a John Deere welded up hydraulic steering ram. So I wanted to just maybe do a quick video and show what I found when I went to cut it, and hopefully when I get it welded back together it'll be a success. If not, my other plan is this. I found this brand new repairable cylinder with removable, repairable glands, I think they call it, on the end, that unscrews on eBay at a hydraulic surplus site for It was, I believe, $50 shipped, brand new. And the only problem, of course, is it has the wrong ends on it. I would have to adapt it to fit my mower. It's just slightly bigger. Overall length is maybe an inch of the cylinder difference. The shaft is a 9/16 shaft, whereas this is a 1/2 inch shaft on the original. But I just don't think that would cause much of a problem. You just have to cut these off, weld this back on here, and weld somewhere along part of this shaft, probably about that much right there, onto that shaft. And hey, Bob's your uncle. So anyway, I wanted to quickly point out this before I start putting it all back together and welding it. Is when I went to cut it apart with the cutoff wheel, you can see how this weld is here. I just ground it. I had the same thing down here. It was a weld built up right there. I ground it down flush and tried to cut right down the middle of the weld. But I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I would have cut like right in front of the weld, like right here, because I kept grinding and grinding and grinding, cutting and cutting, and I'm like, that tube cannot be that thick. And it's not. What they had done is they've put a short sleeve inside here in the end. I guess it was like an alignment sleeve to help them align the tube and then weld it. And I was cutting through the cylinder and that sleeve inside. That's why this thing was so thick. So if you do decide to do this, don't do what I did. Just cut like right to the inside of that weld, and you'll miss that sleeve in there, and it'll be a lot easier to cut off. This piece, when I got through cutting, was still inside there, just like that. I can't, it's falling in. It was stuck inside there just like that, and I just stuck my finger in there and just pulled it right out to see the difference in the thickness of the wall that I was cutting through. So that might be one hint that will help somebody if you ever attempt this on your own. So I'm going to stop the video right here and start putting some of this back together and then get ready to weld it up. This is the scraper seal, and it is just pressed in to the end there. He put the actual rod seal in there for me already. It takes, you have to take that brass washer out of there. There's a little tiny spring clip in there that holds that in place. And once you take that spring clip out, that brass washer pops right out of there, and then you can get right at that rod seal, that rubber rod seal that goes in there. You'd never get it in if you don't take that brass washer out of there. But he did that for me. He had a little pick tool he could get under there and just popped it out, and nothing flat, and popped the other one in the right orientation for me, which was nice because he didn't charge me for that. So that's how that goes in. I'm going to have to tap this scraper seal in there with a hammer and a drift or a drive of some type that'll fit over that, and pound that down in there. And that's what keeps the shaft clean as it moves in and out. So that went in fairly uneventfully. I just used a big socket and my hammer and got it started. Once I got it started, it just drove right on down. I'm going to leave it flush. It was down slightly below the surface, the old one, but I think that's fine like that. I'm not going to try to get a little drift or pin and try to push that down. Afraid I might damage it, so I'm just going to leave it there. Onto the cylinder and rod, or piston and rod, I mean. This part of the seal, the actual piston seal, I thought was interesting the way it's made. This piece on the outside is relatively stiff, some kind of hard material. It's real hard to get that over the piston, but the actual seal itself is is underneath this, down in that groove. It's looks like a regular old rubber O-ring that fits down in there, and this goes over the top of it and compresses that O-ring down when it's in the barrel, and that seals. The actual sealing is done by that O-ring down inside there, expanding in that slot when it goes in there. I thought it was strange. I just thought this part was the seal, the actual seal, but it's a two-part seal. This is the actual piston tapped down on the shaft running through there. It's a tight fit, so I had to tap that down with my hammer. And now I'm just going to tighten that bolt, and that'll be on permanently. And then the trick is going to be sliding this back into the cylinder, because that seal is pretty tight, so we'll see how that goes. Here's something else I found. That was a bitch getting that piston back in there. I knew this, and was going to do it, and I just basically forgot about it. I was going to square this end off and slightly chamfer it on the inside. I did chamfer it, but I didn't even up the end where I had such a hard time cutting it off. And that made that little stiff outer spacer on that piston almost impossible to get in there. I thought I could just compress it with a hose clamp and tap it in there, and boy, it did not want to go. And by the time I realized it was not a good idea, I'd already reached the point of no return. So what do? You get a bigger hammer, and that made it go in there. But I did lose part of that stiff fiber seal, so I've probably failed completely. But it's like I said, that is not the actual seal. That's just a spacer, and even if it does leak a little bit inside, is the hydraulic force trying to go past that leak on that piston, I don't think could really affect the functioning of this little tiny cylinder that's only turning the front wheels of this thing. It has hardly any force on it. It has a hell of a lot of hydraulic force inside here. But I'm going to try it anyway. If the cylinder doesn't work after I get through, I'll know why. It's because I screwed that fiber spacer piece up trying to beat that thing into the damn cylinder. But live and learn. Worst comes to worst, I'll just go with plan B, which is this mama jama. So anyway, wish me luck. Okay, here is my jig made up to hold it while I get it tacked, get the end tacked. And it's just a piece of angle iron clamped to that with a long sliding clamp to put pressure on the end cap to try to hold this together. And as you can see, I cleaned that up square like I should have before I ever even started, and I just forgot about it. I was in a hurry and kept telling myself, don't forget to do that, don't forget to do that, and of course that's the one thing I forgot to do. So anyway, I'm getting ready to go tack it and See how that goes. Well, I'm ready to finally tack. I had to change over the wire on my welder. I had a little wire on there. I had to change the tip and go up to a higher wire size. And I just wanted to point out that when you're doing this, you're going to be welding on this end. So you want to pull the piston as far forward to this end as you can go, because you don't want to, this is all the parts that can melt down here now. So if we can just keep that cold and this hot, we'll be alright. So here we go. Well, I got it tacked in 1, 2, 3 places and going pretty good so far. I'm telling you, it's so hot out here. I'm in South Florida in end of June, and it must be 100 degrees outside, and I'm on the sunny side of the house now, so I made me some makeshift shade here and got me a digital thermometer checking the temperatures on this thing as I'm going, and I just sprayed it all down with water and blowed air on it, and I'm got it down to about what ambient temperature is. So it's kind of hard to tell how much is due to the welder and how much is due to the heat, but I'm going to keep going, just keep cooling it down, just have to go real slow. Well, it sure ain't pretty, but I think I finally got it, all the leaks plugged. Do one final leak test. That's a soap solution with water on there, and I see absolutely no bubbles, and I know that is about the ugliest weld you'll ever see on the internet. But my pretty weld just leaked like a sieve. So basically this is kind of, I guess you'd call it MIG brazing. I welded it first time around, had a good solid hot nice looking weld, but my god, it leaked in about 20 different spots. So at first you don't succeed, try again. So I just kept pouring the coal to her until I got all them holes plugged, and it ain't leaking now. So I ain't gonna grind it down or nothing. I don't give a crap what it looks like. Nobody will ever see it on that mower anyway. As long as it don't leak, that's all I'm after. So I'm going to clean it up, paint it, clean up those threads in there, try to flush it out a little bit, and put it back on the mower and pour the coal to it, see what happens. Well, believe it or not, I think it was a success. I just finished mowing my yard, and I don't see any leaks. I'm trying to get down here. It's really hard to get at. And take a look. There's my weld. There's the front seal, that shaft, and everything looks pretty good. I kind of got it a little greasy when I hooked all the hoses up and got those on tight. Had a little scare on that one right there. Didn't want to seal. It was dripping around there. I thought, oh no, it's my weld, but it wasn't. It was where the hose goes into the cylinder, where I kind of messed it up with the welder. Didn't want to sit flat enough for the O-ring in there to seal right, so I added some Teflon tape to the threads rather than take it all off and file down the cylinder flat, try to get it to seal with the O-ring. I put some Teflon tape on it and it seems to be holding fine. And as far as the piston not working or anything, man, it's smooth as silk. So one finger turner, it's absolutely working flawless. So, and it's not spraying out that front seal at all, and it's not leaking around my weld at all. So I'm going to call it a success. Very happy so far. It may fail next time I use it, but it's working now, so call it a success. Here's a picture or view of my mower, by the way. It's almost brand new, don't it? It's almost 30 years old? Yeah, wow. A few final thoughts on this project. Number one was, is it worth it? Well, it depends on what you do for a living. If you make $1,000 an hour on Wall Street, no. If you're retired and like tinkering with things like I do, that's my relaxation. It's well worth it. I'm over the moon about how it turned out. It cost me around $50 versus $500, so anytime I can do that, I'm very happy. But going into this, I knew that the real challenge was going to be, number one, finding the parts, and number two, getting it welded back together with a MIG welder, which is all I have. I have a decent MIG welder. It's a 220 volt with gas. It's a argon gas MIG welder, but it's a Harbor Freight special, but hey, I like it. It's worked great for me. But I've never tried to weld up a cylinder that's going to be pressurized before, and I know that is not what you would use normally, but that's all I have. Now, if I had a $2,000 TIG welder, probably would have been a hell of a lot easier. But as you can see, I managed to get it plugged up with all the wire I melted on top of that seam, and it's working. So it can be done with a MIG welder. All those people with TIG welders would probably be a piece of cake, but I knew that going in. I was fully prepared to fail, as I do many times. But not this time so far, and I'm very happy with it. It steers like a dream, and no fluid spewing everywhere. So anyway, that's my take on doing that repair. It was the same principles that I showed you apply to all the John Deere garden tractors that have power steering. So if you feel adventurous and you have some welding skills, or you got a friend who does, then I'd cut that sucker apart and go get me some parts for it and weld her up. So it's just my 2 cents worth.